Good evening. Today is Monday, January 27th, 2025. The meeting of the Public Safety Commission has been called to order. We begin to acknowledge that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Gabrielino Kits peoples. Item 2 on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and this evening Commissioner Blau will lead us to the pledge. Next item on our agenda is our roll call. Commission Secretary, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg?
Here.
Commissioner Hallman?
Here.
Commissioner Nickel?
Here.
Commissioner Post?
Here.
Vice Chair Harrison?
Here.
Chair Aramian?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda for January 27th, 2025?
There's no changes to the agenda.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg? Commissioner Hallman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Commissioner Post?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harrison?
Aye.
Chair Aramian?
Aye.
The agenda is approved.
Moving on, item 5 on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes for December 9, 2024?
There are no changes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
May I please get a roll call? Commission Secretary.
Commissioner Blau?
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Hallman?
Aye.
Commissioner Nickel?
Aye.
Commissioner Post?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harrison?
Aye.
Chair Aramian?
Aye.
The minutes are approved.
Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have any speakers at this time?
Yes, we do have some Zoom callers, and we have public comments also in chambers. Would you like for us to start in Zoom?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yola Dore, you'll have 3 minutes to speak if you're there. Can you hear us, Yola?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead and start.
Great. Yola Dore, 30-plus year disabled resident of West Hollywood. Good evening, commissioners, honored guests, and staff. I will be talking for myself. Tonight, I will be speaking to you about emergency preparedness. Recently, when we all experience the excitement, trauma, and issues relating to the Sunset Fire, many of us got messages on our phone. Some of us got emails or phone calls, but some in the community, especially those of other backgrounds, be they Russian or Spanish or whatever, didn't get notices or didn't understand what was going on. And so I might suggest to you as our Public Safety Commission that in the future we look into doing PSAs, not only on our cable network, but on other prominent television stations, radio stations, and whatever about the area being affected. Also, I can tell you how challenging it was for me personally, being a person that's older and a person with disabilities. I was very scared, and I know those folks who don't participate as much must have been. But I hope we'll discuss in the future, in the plan that you're doing, that West Hollywood might not be there. The people we depend on, like you and our first responders and our sheriff's department also, and our block by block, they might not be there for us. So part of the responsibility is ours. And you know, that's a pretty tough thing to swallow. So I hope you'll help us make a plan for all of us and impress on folks how important this is, making a plan and what to do. I thank you for all you do for our city, for volunteering and helping. And I give big thanks to our staff. They've done a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Yola. Our next speaker is Mikey Friedman. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Mikey Friedman, WeHo. This city's January 8th handling of public notifications, especially to those with disabilities and older adults during the Sunset Fire, sucked. I live on Clark Street above Sunset in the evacuation warning zone. I didn't know about the evacuation until one of my panicked neighbors without a car called me begging me for a ride. Shocked, I hastily searched for information. I went first to WehoTV, but no, there was only a video of the 40th anniversary. I tried mainstream media. They were concentrating on all the fires and not on WeHo evacuation information. I was hoping to get a robo-alert call or text. Nope. Amassing all my important stuff with only one arm was extremely difficult. I asked neighbors if they could help me if we did in fact have to evacuate. They were freaked out too, but they said they would try to help once they got their shit together. I still heard nothing from the city, and I was starting to panic. Where do I go on social media? Where do I go on our city website? I don't know. Help! At the city council meeting last Monday, Erickson made the statement that everybody he knows goes to social media. That means he was thinking only of younger people and people who are comfortable using it. Did his thoughts include people with disabilities and older people who are not as savvy? Generally, we go to TV news and to phones. He bragged that Chelsea called the Disability Advisory Board members to alert them. That's 9 people, 4 of whom are not even disabled. What about the rest of us? What did she tell them? Did she ask them to disseminate the information to the public? The only person who called me was Commissioner Nickel to ask if I was okay and to tell me that he had spoken to Captain Mulder. Also, the roads were completely jammed. Even if I had been able to get my belongings to my car, would I have been able to go anywhere? Fountain and Sunset were impassable even to first responders. I hope, for our safety, the city will rethink bike lanes on Fountain. I heard that the protected bike lane on Hollywood Boulevard slowed people down. Was anyone trying to evacuate on scooters or bikes with all their stuff? Again, why was there nothing on WehoTV? Why didn't we receive a mass robocall or text? And where was Block by Block? Are they helping us? I received an email from Commissioner Freiberg the next day asking me some questions about my experience that night. I hope she uses that information wisely and that the city does too, because hopefully the information that I, and I assume others gave her, might help disabled and older adults in future emergencies. Thank you, Joy. And thank you, George.
Thank you, Mikey. Next, we have Wendy Goldman. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Wendy Goldman, resident of West Hollywood, block captain of Cynthia Sunset Neighborhood Watch. Good evening, Chair Aramian, commissioners, city staff, and distinguished guests. I'm speechless after seeing reports of the recent fires and destruction of life and property in the region, and hope that there is sufficient bandwidth to prevent or at least reduce future fires. The state has studied available green spaces that improve air quality, as well as LA County studies across the city and the red zones that have no significant tree canopy. The Sunset Strip area has been identified as one of these red zones. There are few mature trees and many struggling small saplings perhaps because they would block the many billboards that generate tax revenue for the city coffers. Perhaps mature trees were cut down to install underground fiber optic cable, plumbing for new fire hydrants, or other underground facilities that are deemed more important. We know that when development is approved, it usually takes priority over trees, and residents lose the shade canopy that once existed. With so many permanently closed businesses on Sunset Strip, it's difficult to visualize the history of entertainment venues that once attracted young people and visitors from around the world. Advertising banners now wave from tall poles at passing motorists with images of unknown hairstylists or makeup artists hawking products, surrounded by the ever-growing larger billboards. New ones are mushrooming along the strip. Council has approved investment of millions in restoring the log cabin, the playhouse, and in building a sky arch over San Vicente Boulevard. Residents near Sunset Strip deserve investment also to form community relationships and enjoy a place in the fresh air. The northwest border of West Hollywood has been neglected for too long, and residents would benefit greatly from a new city park. It's important to note that the California Master Plan for Aging includes the following: Initiative 12, partner with and incentivize community-based groups, including tribal elder councils, local government, and aging advisory councils, to support aging in place and provide intergenerational programming, transportation, and access to outdoor spaces for older adults and people with disabilities, as well as youth and families. And finally, Initiative 13, creating intergenerational outdoor education programming for children and youth, people with disabilities, and older adults. Programs should encourage intergenerational learning and connection and provide the health benefits of nature, foster community connection, and inspire environmental stewardship. Please consider the urgency of my request for a city park in my area. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next, we have Louise Smith. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Chair, Commissioners, tonight I'm addressing you as Chair of the Disabilities Advisory Board. We met last Wednesday, and we unanimously approved our work plan for 2025. And the #1 priority was emergency preparedness for the disabled, and including the elder, because many of the elders are disabled. Personally, we would like to collaborate with your commission and the Planning Commission on seeing what we can come up with for helping individuals in these situations. We don't have a plan as a city. We think about emergency preparedness, I think, mostly with earthquakes, and I think this took us kind of by surprise. I know I was housing individuals evacuated from the Sunset, and my neighbor was housing people evacuated from Santa Monica fire. And I know the person that evacuated to my place lived in a 200-unit condominium at the foot of Runyon Park. And the fire alarm went off in that building, and many of the Russian-speaking older adults all evacuated, but next to the building. They thought it was a fire in the building. And it was gridlock on Hollywood Boulevard as well as on Sunset. So this is what we're trying to look at, not only the brochures, but some kind of planning, because our first responders are going to triage their time. They need to go where they can save the most people and most property. We have to look after ourselves in our buildings, and we don't know where the disabled are and who they are. One, we need to find out. And buildings need to have some kind of plan, and it needs to be rehearsed, drills, because when it happens, as you heard many of the speakers say, they're scared. They don't know what to do. And since I worked in healthcare, I know what triage works like. You have to prep, you have to be prepared to make decisions. And since we're left on our own, we need all the help we can get from our city's commissions and boards and our city council. I would like to see if we could work together and come up with something. And I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can come up with something good for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Next, we have Mike Natal. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks to all the commissioners and the chair. First, I just wanted to do a shout out and a thank you to Fanny. I just want to say that I had an issue and I went to City Council for help. They helped me. They sent me to Fanny. And I just want to say she's a very kind, thoughtful, compassionate, caring, and just all-around wonderful person. And I just wanted to publicly thank her for that. And also, I think being a female in a male-dominated profession is hard. So I think she's doing an amazing job. So thank you, Fanny. Second, I went to City Council a few times to talk about my favorite topic, which is trash. I made a resolution a few years ago to pick up trash for New Year's, and I'm close to 700 bags now. I do it when I walk my dog around the Tri-West area. It's my beat. And I used to get 2 bags of trash. Now I get 1 bag of trash. And I've noticed one thing from crime reports that we see is that trash and crime kind of tie in together. And one specific example that I have where I noticed there's a lot of trash is at the top of Huntley at Santa Monica Boulevard, where there's like Dayglow and there's like a few businesses there. There's also like a retaining wall there as well with like ivy on it and whatnot. And I thought about the Arts Commission and how do we tie things together as different commissions. And I thought one of the things was, since they're doing murals, they're talking about it, or doing arts projects, is that making areas that receive the most trash in our neighborhood brighter, cleaner, and I think that's one of the things that is a possibility. So when we're making decisions and we're thinking about it, I think tie-ins like that. And the other thing that I would say is, I've noticed where I pick up trash a lot of times, a lot of dumpsters are locked. So even when people want to get rid of their trash, they can't, and it ends up on our city streets all the time. So I don't know if there's ability to do something with that, but having some way to dispose of trash in certain areas where there's no trash cans, I think is extremely beneficial. And that's what I'd say. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we have Steve Martin. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Well, Happy New Year to everybody. On a positive note, I was happy to see a motorcycle sheriff's deputy on Fountain ticketing people who were speeding, so that's all good. And I don't know who was ultimately responsible, whether it was you guys or transportation or whatever, city staff. We finally got a new signal at Fountain in Fairfax, so you don't have to kill yourself making a left-hand turn. You know, these are the little things about government that we really, they really help us, lots of good consensus, and they really make the quality of life better and safer for everybody. You know what's happened in the last couple of weeks with the fires? should be a wake-up call for all of us, because we can, and I don't mean this to be a jab at anybody, but we can't necessarily rely on government. We do have to start relying on ourselves, and we do have to be prepared, and we do have to start thinking about what will happen and not keep thinking that this is something that's going to happen somewhere else to somebody else, because this can happen to all of us, or can happen to some of our friends and neighbors and people who are going to have to help. So I think we're going to need to start figuring this out on how we become better prepared, not just on a city level, but from a more grassroots level that would involve neighborhood watch groups, just neighbor to neighbor, because we can't, not that I'm like I said, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but just sometimes in emergency systems break down and we need to make sure that there's backup. I want to make sure that every HOA has a plan, because these are the people that are very, I want to make sure that the Housing Corporation and other places that do public housing have a plan and have somebody who are going to implement it, and not just leave a lot of people who don't speak English or are elderly or are disabled high and dry. So I think we need to think of this. Sometimes I think we think, I don't want to say superficially, but I think we need to do a deep dive on this. And I just want to say, though, how grateful I am to all the people, all the first responders that helped. And I mean, it wasn't just our guys, although we were very proud of them, our county sheriff, our county fire department rather, but it was great seeing people from firefighters, from inmates for one, firefighters from Canada, Israel, and even a major contingent from Mexico, who are our friends and neighbors, and in my case, distant relatives. And particularly in this day and age, well, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen maybe a little bit of a change in those relationships. But at the end of the day, Mexico and Canada are our good neighbors, and they came to us in our hour of need. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Stephanie Harker. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners, staff. Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. You know, we, the citizens of West Hollywood, need an emergency plan. It was quite clear that we did not have a plan on January 8th when a fire broke out 1 mile from my front door. When I turned on WeHo Channel 10, there was nothing but a rerun of Bruce Valanche hosting the 40th anniversary celebration, as Mikey mentioned. There were gestures made by staff and council, but nothing that could be considered, they were appreciated, but nothing could be considered an emergency plan that could be put into action. There were high winds, as you know, that night. We could see the flames from our street, which were packed with cars, and at one point there was a large fire truck stopped in front of my building, and I thought, oh, is there something going on Vista Street? No, it was stuck in traffic, and it was waiting to get to Santa Monica Boulevard. He couldn't turn his siren on until he got, thankfully he didn't turn it on until he got to a place where people could turn off. Some of my neighbors and I sat in Kathy Blavis's living room with our to-go bags ready while watching the network news and checking outside to see if the flames had been controlled up the hill in Runyon Canyon, which fortunately they had. I researched distances today from Mulholland to Pacific Coast Highway is approximately 30 miles. From Runyon Canyon to Vista Street is 1 mile. The embers, as you know, are what caused a lot of the problem and the high winds in Pacific Palisades. The embers could reach 30 miles away. It could easily have impacted our neighborhood. We had a dire situation 1 mile away, and yet no word on that night of the fire as to what to do or where to go. The county sent out alerts, but even that system had issues, and erroneous alerts went out. At 4 a.m. in the morning, I received one of those alerts, and from that point on, I could not trust that system. Let's not forget the deaf community cannot hear, so please include an in-screen sign language interpreter in all press conferences. And I'd like to see one here at every public safety meeting. They can be requested but I don't think that the deaf community should have to call and ask for it. We should provide it for them. Hopefully you'll make good use of Channel 10. We have a whole television channel dedicated to West Hollywood. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on live on Channel 10 if you have that, but it's always available. The fact that there were no public announcements, no press conference that night on the 8th in this emergency is something that we must correct going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we have Kevin Burton. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Kevin Burton, a resident of West Hollywood and the co-founder of WeHo Research, an emergency preparedness organization composed of community members trained in community emergency response team activities. And the CERT training, which the city hosts most years, teaches community members how to respond during an emergency, after an emergency, to help themselves, their neighbors, their families, and to do so safely. But equally important, it teaches us all how to be prepared ahead of time. And I wholeheartedly second all the comments about the need for people to prepare. And there are public announcements that go on out all the time about this, that people should have a go bag, and you don't put it together just as an emergency is unfolding. You put it together when nothing's happening. You have it there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's what I do, so that you can go. But when you're told to go, and I was a couple of blocks away from the emergency warning zone, what do you do then? That is not explained very well by the emergency services or municipal agencies. They tell you to have your car ready, facing forward to leave. But as we have seen, both Palisades, Eaton, and in the Sunset Fire, if everybody tries to get in their cars all at once and leave, you will not escape. You'll be trapped. Everybody needs to have a plan B if you can't get out in your cars. And that might be walking, pushing a cart. It might be carrying a big backpack. But if you want to move faster than that, you ought to plan for 2 wheels. That might be a motorcycle. A lot of people have bicycles in their garages. I certainly use it all the time. And I can get a big duffel bag on the bike rack. I have a big backpack. I have a couple bags. I can carry everything I need. And on Wednesday evening, January 8th, I went up and down Fountain. Cars were moving 2 miles an hour. I was on a bike. I had no problem moving right along. Everybody has to have plan B when you cannot escape in your car. That's reality. It might be unpleasant, but everybody needs to think about that. And it might just be a little sit-down scooter, not the stand-up kind. So I urge the city and emergency preparedness responders to think about how to communicate plan Bs to people in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we have Kathy Plavis. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners and staff and guests. Kathy Plavis, City of West Hollywood. I really don't have much more to add to what we heard here tonight. I agree with just about everything. The preparedness idea, the concept has to take place. There were so many things that I learned. I'm hoping that we all learned. I'm hoping that the city learned from, and I'm hard-pressed to say it, but from the mistake of not being prepared. Because This happened to be a fire that we needed to be prepared for. Are we also prepared for earthquakes? And it's scary to think about it, but it's true. I love some of the ideas I heard here tonight. I love the idea of the Disability Advisory Board being involved with you. I think the Senior Advisory Board should be involved. I wish there was a way to do some sort of a buddy system. Maybe it can be incorporated with Neighborhood Watch so that people in the neighborhood know who's has the highest potential to be in greater need. I wish my plan B could be on a bicycle, but those days are gone for me. But I agree there needs to be a plan B. Even that night, if we evacuated, we didn't even know where to go. I mean, from the mainstream media, people were going to Pan Pacific Park, but again, I'm just repeating what everybody has said, and I'm sure I'm repeating what all of you have thought about and gone through. I worry about the disabled community, the non-speaking English community. I worried about the concept of aging in place, and I think all these things were touched upon. I really, at this point, really want to thank all of our first responders, our fire department, our sheriff's department, our city staff, you guys, anybody that responded by volunteering, by organizing clothing drives and food drives. If nothing else, we saw what happens when people do come together. And I think we have the opportunity, because we're a small city, to really plan for the worst. So again, I appreciate your time. I am very grateful that we're all here talking about the what if, as opposed to trying to collect for neighbors whose homes were lost. So everyone be safe, and thank you again.
Thank you, Kathy. And our final speaker is Nick Roybal. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, commissioners. Good evening. I am somebody who lives with complex PTSD. So that means there's not a day that goes by where I'm not seeking safety. That Wednesday night that we're all talking about, I'm only going to speak about my experiences and what happened to me and what I saw, what I experienced, what I went through. It was about 6:15, 6:30, Santa Monica Boulevard. I was going to meet a dear friend, and somebody said, "Oh, there's a fire in Runyon." Fire in Runyon, okay, and they pulled up their phone and they turned on, I believe, KTLA. And I immediately, so Jenny's daughter lived and worked in Maui during that fire. And just in my own nervous system, I thought, oh fuck, this is not good. This is not good at all. Immediately, I was like, well, has the city said anything? No. Okay, so we're okay. City, leadership, staff, local government hasn't said anything. We're fine. LA City then sends out the alert that they do. I'm like, okay, this is interesting because several of our boundaries are literally on the same street, on the same sidewalk, crack. Then I have residents coming up to me, well, Nicholas, what's going on? What do we do? I said, I don't know, the city hasn't said anything. I think you're fine. To which I got, Nick, if we stay, can you guarantee we're gonna be safe? No, of course I can. I can't do that. So I start calling people. I call George. I call Lauren. I call Stephanie and Kathy. What's going on? Where is our local government? Absent. Unless you happen to go on a social media site and were friended, the mayor at the time liked their page, followed their personal page, but it wasn't a city government account. That was a personal account that was communicating to people. That's not effective or efficient use of taxpayer money for communication. I had residents coming down the hill when I was on the phone, literally with bags in their hands asking me, well, Nick, what do we do? I said, I don't work for the city. I don't know. I'm not law enforcement. But I would say it's probably not safe where you're at up on Fountain. We have to do better. And I'm not blaming, but we gotta do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And that is all for the public comments.
Great, thank you. Next item on our agenda for this evening is unfinished business, and there's no unfinished business on the agenda for this evening. Item 8A, the Public Safety Commission will receive the social services priorities for the city's Human Service Division's 2025 to 2028 funding process. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Chair Aramian, Vice Chair Harrison, Public Safety Commissioners, and our community members. My name is Christine Seyfried. I'm the Assistant to the City Manager and the Acting Human Services Manager. With me this evening is Michelle Lieberman, Social Services Program Administrator with the Human Services Division. We are grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all, as your input plays a vital role in shaping the future of social services delivered by the city in our community. For a brief overview, the city funds social service agencies on a 3-year cycle to help address the needs and resources of West Hollywood community members. We are concluding the final year of the current cycle and are preparing for the RFP process for the next 3-year contract cycle, which starts in October of 2025 and goes through September of 2028. We are here to share the details, and we seek your feedback for that RFP process. Before we dive into the details, I'd like to ground our conversation briefly in the mission and core values that guide our work in West Hollywood. We are committed to proactively responding to the diverse needs of our community and are dedicated to finding solutions to managing our urban environment while ensuring the well-being of all community members. Our goal is to set the highest standards of excellence to create a community where everyone thrives. Our work is guided by the following core values of the city: respect and support for people, responsiveness to the public, creativity, idealism, and innovation, quality of residential life, and economic development. These values are embedded in the RFP process that we are going to be talking about and help guide our work with service providers to ensure that the community's needs are met, helping to foster an environment where communities not only live but thrive. The first thing we want to address is who is a community member. When we refer to community members, the city defines this group as anyone who lives here, works here, attends school in the city, or spends a significant time unhoused in West Hollywood. This is an inclusive definition and ensures that our services address the needs of all individuals who contribute to and are impacted by life in our city. I'm going to pass things over to Michelle, who will talk with you about the process itself.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having us today. So I will be taking you through the key phases of our RFP cycle, which spans over several months to ensure thorough evaluation and engagement. Kicking it off with phase 1, January through March, we gather input from stakeholders, including community members, service providers, boards and commissions, such as yourself, to identify the community's most pressing needs. From February to April, based on the feedback, city staff develops the RFP, incorporating community input, council directives, and city initiatives to ensure the proposal aligns with evolving priorities. Phase 3, on April 8th, city staff will share the synthesized feedback with the Human Services Commission, refining priorities before moving forward. The official launch of the RFP will be released on April 25th, and proposals will be due on June 6th. From June to July, Human Services staff and Human Services Commission will review and evaluate all proposals received, with public meetings to gather additional input before making final recommendations. And then lastly, phase 5, the City Council will receive and approve all final recommendations, which will determine the funding allocations for the next contract cycle. This multi-phase approach ensures transparency, stakeholder engagement, and aligns with the city's goals and values. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to take you through various funded and diverse range of social services that address a broad range of community needs, including but not limited to behavioral and mental health services, including counseling, crisis intervention, support groups, and more. Older adult and disability services, which includes access to care, resources, and support for our aging and disabled community. Food and nutrition services such as home-delivered meals, congregate meals, food distribution, and nutritional education. Workforce development such as skill building and employment opportunities for residents. Homeless services, which include wraparound services such as street medicine, shelters, case management, and behavioral support. Legal aid and advocacy, assistance with things such as tenants' rights, legal challenges, and immigration services. Sexual and reproductive health services, such as education, prevention, and treatment. And last but not least, our youth, children, and family services with preschool services, outreach, case management, and more. In addition to these services, the city makes broader investments in the following areas, such as subsidized transportation, the Holloway Housing Project, care team services, crossing guard services at local schools, school gardening programs and field trips, grants for schools and community agency developments, various planning and coordination meetings, and community health fairs. These initiatives support a comprehensive system of services that meet the needs of the community all across all age groups and backgrounds. And this brings us to the discussion of why we're here today. So we are here to gather your feedback on 3 critical questions that will directly shape the RFP process for the upcoming cycle. Your input is crucial to ensure that funding priorities reflect the community's most pressing needs. Now I'm going to turn it over to you with the first question. So what are the most significant challenges or unmet needs currently faced by the community your commission or board represents?
Commissioners? Commissioner Blau?
Who wants?
Commissioner
I'll jump
Nigel?
in. Go ahead, Jordan.
Sure. Thank you so much for the presentation. Well, one of the things that I kept hearing about is that there's an epidemic of loneliness, and I know that could be covered in a number of things that you do here. I know that especially for people who might be shut in, when they have people come to see them, it makes a difference. But if there are any opportunities to get people together, especially since COVID and lockdowns, I've had numerous people tell me that this is an issue. So I wanted to mention that. I mean, I think that more pressing, of course, for public safety, of course, is homelessness. And the fact that it is not safe for the people living on the streets, it is not safe for, unfortunately, sometimes a lot of our community members, residents in the city, the people who come here, and I've certainly heard a lot of complaints from small businesses that have to clean up human waste before they can open their business. So first off, if somebody were to come into contact with a homeless person on the street and they are willing and able to accept help, and I know that acceptance is an issue. We receive the reports from the Sheriff's Department every single month, and I've been on ride-alongs, and it is not their primary responsibility, but they still go out of their way to offer help. I've never seen it above a single digit, even if they've offered help 70 more times. So if somebody is willing to accept help and they want a home to live in, they do not have a mental health issue, they do not have a substance abuse issue, which certainly might need to be taken care of before they can be put into a house or be ready for that, where do they go to? Who do we send them to?
You can definitely refer them to the social services department within Human Services. We work with various contract providers to deliver those types of services. Housing is challenging, of course, not only here but across the nation. But our agencies are trained. They're really good at doing research, and whether it's getting them into temporary shelter and then permanent housing, there's obviously steps that go into it. But our providers are really good about putting people in temporary placements and working with other providers to get them permanent housing.
So I'm sort of jumping ahead to the question too. I mean, I think that one of the difficulties, of course, is bureaucracy, especially for people if they are living on the street. They probably don't have a smartphone that they can power up all the time to access these things. I have heard that that is an issue. What kind of housing is available right now for people, especially if they have pets, if they're living with pets? Because this is one of the reasons why a lot of people will not accept help if they have to give up their animals.
Got it. Thank you. We are tonight seeking your input on priorities, and so we're happy to take your comments and your feedback, but I think if we are all asking questions about what services we're delivering now and what we can offer, that's kind of a different set of, that's a different report and one that we would be happy to come back and provide. I just want to keep us focused on tonight's item, which is to provide feedback and priorities about what community members are seeking in the community that you represent, and we are happy to absolutely take this feedback and make sure that we are addressing it.
Sure. So then my comment would absolutely be, we need to do all that we can, continue to do so, to get the people who are living on the streets into housing, if they're ready for housing, or into substance abuse programs, or into mental health care if that is what they need. So, thanks.
Vice Chair Harrison.
I would just echo that completely. I think the unhoused situation is something that just needs continued attention. I know that you are focusing on it. It's absolutely the number one thing I hear about, that I'm concerned about, that I witness daily. And I know that's true for most of the people in my area, center city area. But yeah, I think the unhoused situation is just something that needs to just continue to have a priority focus, because it just affects everyone's day-to-day lives, quality of life, and there seems to be a lot more work to do there.
Again, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate you guys being here today. When it says what are the most significant challenges, I think communication is going to be a significant challenge, specifically for the Russian-speaking community who live on the east side. Many of them do not know how to use a smartphone. They have, the government phones that are given to them so that they can make local phone calls. A lot of them don't know how to research information. So I would say community outreach to the seniors, the elderly, the disabled, will be, I think, as a main challenge that I see currently.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'll add just real quickly. I think it's already been mentioned, but the substance use side is what I'm interested in, especially. I know we had a Proposition 36, which I'll ask the sheriffs a little bit about if they've had any updated guidance around that. But as there's been increased thoughts around enforcement, I think we should also be thinking about those alternatives. And so I know Healthcare in Action does a lot of that in the street response work, but I think looking at overdose prevention centers or something that's a central hub for these folks is something that's really something important in my opinion that we should be doing. I know there's, I think, state laws that come into play when thinking about those things, but I hope the city continues to explore new options specifically to treat those substance abuse issues.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but when I went on a ride along with the deputy, we stopped at an area that is frequently a place where unhoused individuals will hang out. He made contact. The other commissioner that I was with, we were invited in because the individual was okay with that. And the individual was young. and was open to services. The deputy tried ad nauseum to connect with agencies to help this individual. No one picked up the phone. There was no one available for this deputy who was going somewhat outside of his duties and tasks to try to help this young individual. The commissioner that I was with started to make calls. No one picked up the phone at these different agencies. I think we need some type of centralized call center that's the first point of contact. If a deputy or resident may see someone who's unhoused, they can call, and within a certain amount of time, the necessary agency is deployed to help that individual. We left very frustrated, and I could tell the deputy was frustrated because he was trying to help. You know, when you make a suggestion to someone who's unhoused, oh, you can go to facility A or C, they don't have a vehicle, they're on foot, all of their worldly possessions are in one location. How is this supposed to happen? This is where I think we fail. And I would like to see if we can really address this particular issue.
Thank you. Okay, this brings us to our next question. What specific factors or obstacles make it difficult for your community to access existing social services in West Hollywood? I know some were mentioned, but if anyone has alternative input.
Again, I would think it's accessibility. You know, depending on what demographic you're talking to, some people are more tech savvy than others. But if you're looking at the older adults or the disabled, you know, accessibility is an issue. So that has to be placed into consideration, how we could accommodate the older adults as well as the disabled adults to make sure they're aware of the same information that's at our fingertips.
Yeah, I would just add to that. We think we've talked about this a lot as a commission, just access to information and providing information consistently. And I know we're working on it. I know there are positions being considered, but I think just information getting to the public in a consistent way is really important. I mean, we all talked about the block by block pamphlet that was distributed, that or the magnets, and then followed up by, you know, a safety guide. I just think that type of information needs to get out consistently and more frequently.
Good evening. Thank you for your presentation. It's a little difficult to focus on this issue right now when we have these other issues at hand that everyone's very concerned about. But as a past human services commissioner, once again, it is communication. What is it going to take? I mean, when I was on the commission, all they did was bring out the little blue booklet, throw it out once a year to everybody, and then that was it. Nobody knows about your services, and that's the problem. You have tons of great services. I mean, even this flyer that they had sent out about the drone program and all of that, they got a big response out of this. Do you agree with that? Like, it was a big response. Just, you know, sending a flyer out every couple months to everybody, you know, visiting the housing corporations. What do we have, about 15 buildings by the housing corporation? Go to the housing corporations, you know, to all of those buildings, to the buildings with seniors, with people with disabilities, low income. I mean, we talked about this so many times. I just don't know what it's going to take at this point. So I guess that would be, and I'm not taking it on you because you guys weren't even there, but it just seems like the same conversation over and over again. You have tons of services, nobody knows about them. Why? How is that possible? So that would be my one comment. I'm just going to leave it there for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Blau?
Thank you. I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but something that's come to mind while we're talking about this, and I think is important because it touches on what my fellow commissioners have said, is we got a report from Healthcare in Action, and I thought they had a really interesting tool set that I think maybe would apply to, question one, some of the more challenging things here, being unhoused. Healthcare in Action talked about how they've got when they go and meet an unhoused individual, they'll give them like a pager with like a geolocator, effectively, that's pre-charged and ready to go. I'm wondering if, like has been mentioned, unhoused people, they've got mobility issues, maybe they don't want to move around, maybe they do move around a lot, right? They're fixed, they're not fixed. Maybe that's something that we could explore as a city, having those maybe on hand with our different community safety partners to be able to hand out in these kinds of situations. And then if they get lost, we can go back and recover them at another time. Food for thought. Thank you.
Commissioner Freiberg?
One more comment to bring up, because when I was on the commission, I don't know if it was actual employees of the city or they hired somebody, but there were canvassers that had gone to the hotels to tell the workers about our services because we cover people who work in our city. So I'm wondering, can we do the same thing, going to around our, with our residents? And also, this was something I was going to bring up for what we can do about being prepared. This is going to our next subject, for emergency services, get canvassers out there to the people, in the buildings who live with disabilities, who have mobility issues. So I'm getting kind of forward off track here, but I will be visiting that back again. So I just wanted to bring that up. If you did know, was it volunteers or were they actual, I think it was staff that had visited the hotels?
I'm not too sure about that answer, but we can come back to the commission with the correct answer.
Any other commissioners?
Okay, great. And you did jump ahead, but I'm glad, because our next question is, if additional resources were available, what new or expanded social services would you prioritize for the community?
I'm going to hop in here. When I was looking through the list on the proposal program that was enumerating all the different, I think, potential RFP options, I don't know exactly how the Jewish Family Services works and if that's constrained just to like the Jewish community. But I think one of the areas that that kind of would assist in general with kind of building some trust with the unhoused community is the nutrition programs, and making that more easy and accessible. Again, provided a kind of consistent funnel to route everyone through, and make the navigating of the different services and the suite of options we have more easy.
There you go. I think I said it already. I think the answer to question 3 is the same as partly 1 and 2, to be honest. It's information and consistent distribution of information. And prioritizing that, I think, would be really valuable, as we've learned from other recent examples.
I think, oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, it's probably been said as well, but just housing. I think we could all agree that the city could be providing more housing. I know finding space for that, whether it's interim or short term, whether it's those first 1 to 3 months or a whole year following. But seeing more projects like the Holloway House, I think, is something that we would all agree is definitely needed. And I hope that the city can find the funding to do more projects like that.
And I'll just add food insecurity. I think with rising prices, it's going to become a bigger issue. We often think about the homeless community. Of course, we understand that they need everything, But there are lots of people who just can't afford to get the food that they need. And I know that we have a number of services that help, that go even around to the West Hollywood Housing Corporation and give food. It's wonderful, but I think that there'll probably be an increased need, unfortunately, for that. And then the other thing, I don't ask a question if it's okay. I don't know if we're coordinating at all with the care court to try to help get people into the help that they need, especially when it comes to mental health issues. And that's across the board, care court or otherwise, mental health issues, there's a pressing need there. So I don't know how much we are coordinating, if we are trying to talk to people and make them feel comfortable about going to the court and get that need. But if we're not, I think that we should. I know that the rollout has been slow. I mean, the numbers that I've seen have been really small. I think 268 petitions as of September in all of LA County once it started, and that 18 to 26% of those were already dismissed. But help is there. We just need to connect people to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your input. We deeply value it and are appreciative. In terms of next steps, we will be incorporating your feedback into the minutes here, and we will also be bringing your feedback as part of a report to the Human Services Commission. The Human Services Commission will be discussing the feedback received from all of the commissions and advisory boards that we are going to, which have constituents specific to and that are target populations for the city's human services programs. In terms of a few other things that you raised, I just wanted to say that to provide a few resources. If you are concerned about a community member experiencing homelessness, please call the Homeless Concern Line at 323-848-6590. This is a non-emergency line, but it is monitored by city staff, and we try to return calls within 15 minutes. Our general target is 15 to 30 minutes. During regular city business hours, 8 to 6 Monday through Thursday, and 8 to 5 on Fridays. And on weekends and evenings, that Homeless Concern Line is monitored by the city's care team, and they answer the phone live, and or if they're already on a call, they do respond to it as soon as they are off that call. So we've been trying to fill the gap in kind of immediacy of response times using that line. The city's care team will also have a direct phone line to the care team. We're working on getting that published very soon, I would say sometime in the next 2 months. And there are plans in the works to improve and expand our communications, both in terms of the clarity and the frequency. So we hear you, and we will incorporate that feedback, and those are some of the initiatives that staff are working on. So I would just like to say one other thing, which is that at the last council meeting, it was a focus on community safety and well-being, and the homeless initiative was a staff report that was presented to the city council, and the city council gave feedback that they'd like to hold a special study session on homelessness. And so the city clerk's office and staff are working on scheduling that, and I'm sure that information will be shared with you, but there's going to be a special study session to discuss the city's homelessness initiative and the city's response to homelessness in a very focused meeting. So with that, thank you again. Thank you for your continued dedication and support for the West Hollywood community, and we will turn it back over to your agenda.
Any other commissioners have any comments on this matter? Commissioner Freiberg?
Just one more. Instead of just having the meal services given to JFS at astronomical prices, because they do charge us double what a gourmet service would actually charge, I think other larger cities are looking into voucher programs where they can put the meal services into the community, into our local restaurants who would really appreciate that business, instead of giving a large chunk to JFS for a very small amount of residents that we have that actually use the program. And that would be it. Thank you.
Commission Secretary, do you have any public speakers at this time?
We have no comments on this item.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Item 8B on our agenda this evening is from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, who will provide a report on December's activity.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Our Los Angeles County Fire Department unfortunately cannot join us tonight. They are dedicated to other assignments, so we will share some of their updates with you, and if you have any questions, we'll make sure to relay that over and bring those answers forward at the next meeting. In the month of December 2024, the Los Angeles County Fire Department had a total of 614 responses. There were 17 fires, 15 of which were categorized as rubbish fires. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to take those, and if we do not have the response at this time, we'll make sure to bring that back.
Any commissioner comments?
Besides, we're beyond thankful. I don't, you could bring that message back and say we're beyond thankful.
Commission Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
We do. Steve Martin, if you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Steve Martin, West Hollywood. I just wanted to relate my experience and experience of my neighbors during the Runyon fire, and my husband and I, we were watching it on TV, and it did look close, but one of my neighbors came over and was crazily banging on the door saying we needed to get the hell out. And at first I thought he was kind of crazy, and he said, come outside, come to the street. And the first thing I noticed when I got to Poinsettia, my Poinsettia Drive, is that the street was practically gridlocked. And people were coming off a fountain trying to just get out. And he pointed out where the fire was, and it looked like it was less than a mile from my house. I mean, it was really close. I mean, it's not one thing seeing fires up in the hills, but really down low. So then I saw several of my neighbors just sort of waving and trying to get in their car and saying, well, hopefully good luck and we'll talk to you later. At that point, I wasn't in a position to really be able to move my spouse or get out because of the traffic. So I just took out a hose and wetted down my roof and got the cat carriers out and put them on the front porch just in case we had to walk out. But I think we need a plan that goes beyond what we have talked about in the past. We've got several inflection points in the city where the hills come down and hit Sunset or hit close to Fountain, where a wildfire can turn into an urban fire like we saw at Altadena and Pacific Palisades. You know, a year ago, that would seem ridiculous and far-fetched, but that's not what's happening now. Almost every house on my street is 100 years old, built of wood. They're not, I mean, we don't have slate roofs or anything like that anymore. Fortunately, I have a tile roof, but they're tinder boxes. And a lot of the places on my street, a lot of the stuff is built lot line to lot line. So one house goes up, it's gonna be really hard to contain it. We saw that, Adam, on your street with the fire at the abandoned house that caught the apartment on fire. So our emergency responses are gonna have to be different. Also, I do think one of the things that came up was the shortage of fire stations. And I really think that replacing our fire station needs to become a priority. And I need to think that the city needs to come up to the belly up to the bar and recognize we are going to have to pay for it because we're rich. The last time we replaced the other fire station, we paid at least half of it, but we were the lead agency, and we were very fortunate to have some good staff members. But that needs to happen now because we at least need to get a work plan going on it. And I know all of you guys are interested, and we know the fire department's interested. So maybe you can schedule that for further discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. And that is all for the public comments.
Thank you. Item 8C on our agenda this evening is from Block by Block Security Ambassadors, who will provide a report on December's activity.
evening, Commissioners. A little strange to talk about December when so much has happened in January. But to report for December activity, business contacts in December totaled a number of 4,775 total business contacts. Unhoused contacts by our ambassadors totaled 1,650, which equated to about 2 contacts per hour. And we had a total of 733 calls for service for the month of December, which equated for about 1 per hour. We saw increased activity over the New Year week festivities, especially on Santa Monica and the Rainbow Boulevard. Very, very active night for our teams. In regards to fire emergencies, from the ambassador perspective, we did maintain visibility in areas where we deemed high fire danger with embers coming down from the hillsides, Veterans Park, Fairfax and Fountain, certain areas that a lot of the wind activity was, we were seeing a lot of potential for fire. In order to keep our ambassadors safe, we did provide K95 masks for everyone, keeping in mind air quality, checking that proactively every hour just to make sure everyone was safe. But we were able to maintain most of our patrols doing so. Thankfully, none of our ambassadors were impacted by any of that, and so we had no serious issues to report with that. Just really quickly to comment on social services, I would like to personally thank Healthcare in Action and WeHo Cares. They have become incredible partners over the last year with us specifically as we made contact with individuals that are seeking social services. Just to share a quick story, a few weeks ago there was an individual at West Hollywood Park who's a known individual, has a number of belongings but was in really, really bad medical shape. And so we reached out to Healthcare in Action. They arrived pretty quickly, within like 30 minutes. And then we also, WeHo Cares was also in the area doing their rounds there. So we also got in contact with them, and they, in partnership with Healthcare in Action and WeHo Cares, they were both able to convince this gentleman to seek medical attention because he was refusing medical attention at that time. So we continue to lean heavily on both social service providers, Healthcare in Action and WeHo Cares, as we provide a warm handoff for anyone who's looking for social services. And I'll take any questions you may have at this point.
Do any commissioners have any comments at this time? Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see you.
Hi,
Thank you
George.
for your report. I did just have a question about call number 17. It was an unhoused encampment, that there was a weapon there. There was a call. Can you talk a little bit about that? What kind of weapon was it? Who called it in, and what happened?
So that was during one of our later evening patrols. We were flagged down by a resident who noticed an encampment building in that area. Our ambassadors approached the encampment, made contact with the unhoused individual, who then displayed what was later deemed to be a fake gun. I apologize if I didn't list that there, but it was a fake gun. We did contact sheriffs, though, because of the aggressive nature in which this unhoused individual was, presenting this quote-unquote weapon. He was detained and taken into custody.
Did the ambassadors determine it was a fake gun, or did the sheriffs?
Sheriffs.
The sheriffs did.
Yeah.
So even though they were dealing with a gun, when they got there, what they thought was a gun, they were able to de-escalate, see exactly what was going on, and no one was harmed.
Correct.
Good. I will also bring this up with the sheriffs when they report, but we're having increased activity in the alley behind the Charlie, which is right beside Fire Station 8, as you know, on the east side.
Yes.
Vandalism, observed apparent drug use and dealing in things. So I always just ask if it's possible. Residential patrols really help, and that alley, because there are people whose primary entrance is in the alley, actually. It's not on Norton or one of the streets. So they have to go out there, and it's a little scary sometimes.
Yeah, that property is near the 7-Eleven, which has a lot of activity, and so we are pretty frequently in that area responding to calls for service. And then addressing, the alleyways, as you mentioned, near the carports there as they enter. Unfortunately, we can't enter the private property once it's deemed private property, but if we see activity in the alleyway, in the public right of way, absolutely, we're addressing, so.
Well, the problem is there's this weird alcove that's built into the back of the building facing the alley, which provides shelter.
Yeah.
So that's where these things are happening. I've been speaking with the developers, the people who build it. They are trying to enclose it, and hopefully code compliance can speed that through when they get a proposal. One last question. If there was an evacuation, are block-by-block ambassadors trained to assist evacuating residents?
So in terms of evacuating residents specifically, that's not currently something that we have a plan in place. But we do work closely with our public safety department to assist, for example, the WeHo Community Center, the ARC, and areas that we deploy. But if that is something that we need to look into more closely in regards to a specific plan with the city, we'd be more than happy to do that.
I think it should be considered because thankfully that fire was put out really fast because of our first responders, our fire department. But if the winds had been strong, if it hadn't been, we would have needed absolutely everyone doing all that they could. So
yeah,
you guys are there.
And it goes without saying, obviously, we were out patrolling as well during that time, and so also keeping in mind, the high winds and the potential for additional fires down on Santa Monica and areas that were high risk. We were still on patrol, and even when we, had individuals coming down from Sunset down through Fountain, in those areas, if we saw somebody that might needed help, I know that I personally ran into some elderly individuals with a wheelchair, let me help you get to where you're getting to. So just as in second nature, like we're going to help as much as we can. So
of course, but it would be good for you to have training.
Sure.
It would be good to have a plan in place, and it would be good for you to have information pushed out directly to all of your ambassadors, because if there is an elderly person, a disabled person who doesn't know what to do, and there's a fire on the hill above them, and they approach you guys because you're approachable and you're helpful, hey, the city just told me you don't have to evacuate, but let me help you get home, or you do need to evacuate.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Freiberg.
Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you once again for getting our social services information out there. I really appreciate that. And I guess this could also cross over as a question for the city staff as well as you is what is the role during emergencies for block by block? Is there a role? Is that part of the contract? I mean, what part do they play in this situation? Anybody?
So in regards to our internal block-by-block training, we do have an emergency preparedness training. And again, depending on where we are deployed, that training is focused around those areas. With such a wide area of coverage, we're going to react to where the need is most necessary, and then also take direction, from the city as that emergency becomes more prevalent in certain areas. So as of now, the direction that we take as far as where we are pushing our resources is no different than how we react to, current areas that need more visibility, right? Or need more patrol, or we need to act more of a deterrent in. So currently that direction is going to come from the city as far as where they would like where they would like our deployments to be shifted to.
Okay. I think it's like we have an army of ambassadors, and we could do something here, that can really help people during a crisis. So when you say you can shift people to a certain place, but what are they doing there?
Yeah.
Like who's
again, I think it's just going to depend on the emergency situation. Yeah, of course. And then again, at the direction of the city, then we would assist in any way we can.
Okay, so let me ask you, so the day of the Sunset Fire, were there any of your protocols changed? Did people move around? Like, what did you guys do?
So in the case of the
And
Sunset,
girls, sorry.
in the case of the Sunset Fire, because there was safety concerns around patrolling and the congestion, well, let me backtrack. Our Sunset Patrol is scheduled for the overnight shift. So from 9:30 to the morning hours. So during the day, we wouldn't have an active patrol there per our contract. So, but
And
during
how many people would that be at nighttime?
currently, it would be 6 ambassadors. And then again, because of the street closures that were going on Sunset during that time, it would be it was very difficult for us to get up there. And then also, because everything happened so quickly, we wanted to also make sure that our ambassadors were kept safe. Obviously, there was a lot of smoke that was coming down, and while we did our best to find, I'm sure all of you experienced, finding K95 masks that close to the fires was a little challenging. So at that point, because of the closures to Sunset and obviously the direction that we were getting from the city as far as the fire department was concerned, we pulled our teams earlier in the day from areas closer to that. Our overnight teams, unfortunately, weren't up there because of the active danger, and again, because of the danger of smoke inhalation with increased air quality concerns.
Okay. And they're not trained, or I don't think they're allowed to direct traffic, right?
No.
They can't do that. Only the sheriffs can do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And just to add to that, so the block by block personnel are not first responders in that instance, and so we certainly, as you heard our general manager speak about, looking at the safety of the security ambassadors is their utmost importance, and then obviously looking at if there is specific needs in certain areas. You heard Erica mention about the community centers and the parks and facilities, et cetera. And so there obviously would be a need for support and assistance as it relates to that. And so that would be the primary role as it relates to our block by block security ambassadors, and really relying on our first responders to perform any sort of evacuation type of orders or assistance or warnings, no differently than what the community has seen that has occurred throughout every other community that's been impacted by the fires recently. So.
But is that something we can do down the road? You know, have ambassadors help people with mobility issues? You know, like concentrate in that area. You know, is this something that we could plan to do maybe in the future?
So it's definitely something that we'll look into if it's safe and depending on the situation. Absolutely, it's something that we can take advantage of even now. You know, if we need to get information out, if it's safe to do so, in also communicating with the security ambassador management, if they feel that they're safe, their employees are safe and can assist in that regard, then absolutely. But that's a constant conversation that goes on and was occurring throughout the Sunset Fire. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Nickel? Oh, I'm sorry. Heilman? Heilman.
Why, thank you. I've been elevated to council. Our senior safety officers, it's a newer program. How is that going so far?
It's going great. We've received a lot of positive feedback from park staff and management. We're currently, because it's still a newer program, we are starting to collect more consistent data from them in the parks as far as activity. But feedback that we have gotten from park staff and management has been extremely positive.
And what are their hours of operation?
So currently they are following park hours of operation.
So are there any officers staffed in parks in the evening, at night?
Yes, so currently, for example, here at the ARC, you'll see somebody until 10 p.m. Maybe even later if park staff is still here. They have been known to wait for park staff to completely exit. They do a sweep of the building and then they will go home.
And am I correct to understand that they are former law enforcement?
Correct.
The majority of them? So in an emergency situation, is there a way for our senior staff to have a more active and instrumental role in assisting, or maybe a leadership role because of their background? Is that possible?
Well, currently, because of where they are deployed at the parks, currently their direction is only to be at the parks. As Danny mentioned, they're not first responders in this role anymore, but although they do come with that extensive training. But again, at the direction of the city, depending on what the emergency is and what the need is, we can certainly make adjustments to any of our staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commission Secretary, are there any public speakers?
Yes, we have two. First, we have Ed H. If you want to approach the podium, you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners and community people. I just checked my call log, but I live on Flores, just north of Santa Monica, and I daily call block by block people because we have the same exact homeless person on our street every single day. I just checked my call log 15 times in November, 21 times in December, and so far 14 times in January. If the person doesn't want to get help off the street or something, but they're just constantly there, who do we and how do we get people like that taken off the street? And I had another question. I was looking at the report that was on the agenda, and I just want some clarification real quick. I'm looking at the, for instance, call number 10. It has date and time of incident, 12 p.m., called at 12:10. If you're not called at 12:10, how do you know what time? Every single one of these has that type of input. The time of incident is earlier than the time they were called. So I just wanted some clarification. How did you get the, if you're not called until a certain time, how do you know what time the incident is? But then my other question that I do would like some type of help with, how do we get the people that don't want to get housing off of the streets? Because they're scaring the neighbors on the street. Like I said, I didn't say it, but I'm the co-block captain of the street that I'm on, and my neighbors are calling me asking, how do we get these people off the street? Because we're constantly calling about them. That's all I got, thank you. And it's the same people over and over and over again.
Thank you, Ed. Next, we have Stephanie Harker. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. First of all, I just want to say how much we appreciate Block by Block, because they are our eyes and ears when we're not out there. But I have some concerns about Plummer Park specifically. I don't know if anyone saw, someone posted on various places, but somebody had started a pretty hefty fire underneath one of the old sycamores next to Great Hall, Long Hall. I think the day after, 2 days after the Runyon Canyon fire broke out. And this was, I don't know if it had already been reported, but the gentleman who posted it was a dog walker who was walking his dog at 5 a.m. And I personally have reported 2 different trash can fires there. I don't know if there's any way to train people or something to be noticing those types of things. It could have been very serious. It was like a bonfire. I don't know if it was trash or what, as they say, next to below the tennis courts. But I think we need maybe stronger things overnight. Someone was also reported that there had been someone walking through Plummer Park carrying a rifle. So it takes kind of a long time for block by block to get there, or the sheriffs to get there. Is there any way we can report these things faster, and or also sort of preempt them by noticing when there's suspicious behavior going on? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and that is all for the public comments.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Item 8D on our agenda this evening is from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, who will provide a report on December's activity.
Good evening, Commission. Okay, to get into the December data for West Hollywood Sheriff Station, we had a total of 1,632 calls for service. 79 of those are emergency response calls. Our deputies made 40 felony arrests and 86 misdemeanor arrests. Our Part 1 crime data for the month of December, we had 224 incidents of Part 1 crimes. Broken down by district, the West accounted for 59% of those crimes with 130. City Center, 17% with 39, and our East, 24% at 54 of those crimes. We had 18 reported pickpocketing incidents in the Rainbow District. That number has dropped down significantly from last month. For December, we had 85 sorts reports. We encourage people to use our sorts program, which is the online reporting program for people reporting crimes that aren't able to come to the station or have a deputy come out to their house. Certain types of crimes qualify for that. We provided a little handout or a little flyer that we have in our lobby for anybody who's here today at the meeting to take home with them more information about sorts. It's in the lobby. Our MET team responded to 88 incidents for the month of December. Some things we'd just like to touch on moving forward in this year. We're trying to push out more information from our station, utilizing certain aspects of media, things like Nixle. Again, we put out flyers in the lobby talking about the Nixle program. Currently, Nixle is a public safety alert system that's used by more than 8,000 public safety agencies across the nation. Nixle is used to spread awareness during incidents like police activity, things closing streets for extended amount of times, road closures, events, floodings, gas leaks, things like that. It also can be used for evacuation orders when orders are received. Currently, the West Hollywood account or the West Hollywood station Nixle has approximately 14,000 people enrolled. And just to give you some perspective, West Hollywood has 35,000 residents. So we would really like to get that information out there to have more people enroll in that when incidents do occur in West Hollywood, to keep the community informed as to what's going on in this area. To enroll in Nixle is fairly easy to do. We've set it up now where it's even easier. Before it had a zip code type of a program to do it. Now we've just set it up where you can text, the number you're texting to is 888-777, and all you have to do is text WeHo Sheriff, all one word, and you become enrolled in the program. Obviously this month has been very busy with the fires. West Hollywood deputies aided the communities of Altadena and Malibu during these fire events. The Sheriff's Department response to the disaster placed all of our patrol stations on what we call a tactical response schedule. While on these schedules, our deputies work what we call a 12 and 12 schedule, which means they work 12 hours on duty and then 12 hours off duty with no days off. All of our station personnel are mandated to respond and to be at work during this time. And that provides for a maximum amount of personnel to be available for the fires as well within the city. So basically, what happens is we have enough personnel that we can send out to help and aid those other communities while fully staffing our station for calls, for anything else that comes up. So during those times when we were sending people, we were never short-staffed. The city of West Hollywood always had enough staffing to patrol our streets while aiding other communities. Just a quick little side story on what happened on January 11th, which was a Saturday. We did send some deputies out to the Malibu area to aid in the fires there. One of the tasks that they were involved in doing is keeping people evacuated and preventing people from going into the evacuated areas. Two of our deputies were alerted by a person that there might be some people that might have broken into a location nearby. Our two deputies kept their eyes out and kept a lookout for those people, and about 15 minutes later, they spotted those two individuals. They detained those two individuals. One of them was dressed with a fire department coat, and the other one had a backpack on him. After detaining those two individuals, it was learned that they, in fact, had broken into a local location that was in the fire zone. LAPD responded because it was their jurisdiction. They ended up arresting those two individuals for looting and for impersonating a firefighter. So it's just a good little story that our deputies were out there being vigilant, even though they're in a different area. They were out there trying to help that community and stop those people from looting. On January 21st, Captain Mulder presented City Council with a 12-month report, which included data relating to our Part 1 crimes. Just to give you a quick glimpse, our Part 1 crimes for the year decreased by 11% over the 2023 year. And that's all we have, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Any comments from commissioners? Vice Chair Harrison?
Just comment to thank you for your service. And, 12 hours on, 12 hours off is really difficult. But not only that, just seeing what, you had to see, that we all watched. We were glued to our televisions watching, and then all feared that would happen in our backyard, just because of how quickly it was spreading. So just want to thank you for everything that you did.
And then on that note, as far as the sunset, as I mentioned earlier before we started the meeting, I was deployed to the Eaton fires, and yes, those seeing it in person and seeing the devastation is different than what you see in the news. But when the Sunset Fire erupted, I was still at Eaton, and Captain Mulder, myself, and Danny Rivas were in contact of what steps we needed to take if it came, beyond the ridge, beyond, just the hillside. So, and we were constantly reevaluating. I know that traffic was one of the issues that came into play but we have steps in, let's say if we had made the decision that we needed to close down traffic and make it a one-way street, we have the capabilities of doing that. If we needed to get people evacuated, we shut down streets and we make it one-way streets, where we have the capability based on what the need is. So at the time, yes, there was congestion, there was a lot of traffic, but speaking with our partners, our fire department partners as well, because they're the experts in the fire and the fire patterns, and they know their fires, and they give us, tell us, hey, this is what needs to happen, we need to move now. They would give us that direction. So there was no need for us to shut down streets and make it into a one-way street to have people evacuate, to get people moved out. So those plans are set in motion, and even now we're in talks of how to make the process better. Because we're always learning. How do we make it better? What happened here? What situations can't we improve? Communication is one. We've talked about that as well. So we're constantly reevaluating things, trying to see how do we make it better? How do we, make sure that our community knows what's going on? But just rest assured, the city, Captain Mulder, myself, we were in talks with our fire partners to see what steps we needed to take. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that we're in constant communication. And again, can we do better? Obviously, there's always room for improvement. But I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we were in constant communication. Even though I was not here, I was at a different fire, we were communicating and trying to make sure that our community was safe. And then we're ready for any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I have a question in regards to an incident of a suspect that was detained at gunpoint on January 24th on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hilldale. Just want to know if you could provide any information on that, if there are any arrests made, or what the call was for that.
So that call came in from one of the locations off in Santa Monica. That individual was claimed to have pointed a gun at patrons in on 8900 block of Santa Monica. When the deputies arrived, the individual matched the description of what the informant stated. Deputies detained him at gunpoint because obviously, the call stated that he had a gun. When deputies contacted the individual, there was no gun. There was no. He didn't have a weapon on him. They searched the area. There was nothing. So there was no arrest made because we didn't have a victim of the individual who called was no longer at the location. So again, that was what we do when we confront, when the call states that somebody has a gun, we're going to confront them that way.
My other question is, about maybe a week or 2 weeks ago, there's been an increase of moped and dirt bike takeovers on San Vicente and Santa Monica that have been brought to my attention. They're just like your dirt bike crew people who just come right around and just do circles around the intersection. Have you guys heard of that or anything of that sort?
Yeah, we're aware of them. They have come into our area in the past, and basically what we do is we try to send as many patrol units out there as possible to kind of saturate the area and encourage them to leave the area. I'm not aware of one that happened recently, but we will look into it. Sometimes they don't get reported to us, but in the past they have come in, and it's different groups, different types of bikes. But basically what we do is we try to just maximum enforce laws and things like that when they do come into our areas.
Thank you. Commissioner Nickel?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sergeant Duran and Lieutenant Lapkin, for your report and also for all that you do, all that our first responders do during these days. It's so appreciated. Thank you. So I did just want to say thank you also for the reduction in crime. I know how hard you work. Overall, it is down over 11% year over year. We still have work to do in aggravated assault, which includes assault with a deadly weapon, gun, and knife, and then those residential burglaries. So hopefully the technology coming on board will be helpful. I'm really glad that we have that. Is there anything else that we can do, we can help with to help with those things, or that just the residents need to know to be vigilant that might help with those things?
I mean, we always state that, thank you very much for the appreciation of our staff, during the fires. But I'm going to repeat Captain Mulder's, if you see something, say something. That is always key. If you see something that does not look suspicious, somebody sitting in their car, somebody call us. Let us figure out what is going on. Somebody can be sitting in their car waiting for, for whatever reason, but let us go out there and I find out what they're doing there. As far as anything that we need, I mean, we look forward to the technology platform that we're going to have, and I know from our partners just next door and other law enforcement partners that use that technology, it's an asset to us. So we know that it's going to definitely help, but once we have that system in play, I'm sure we're going to be able to help with the solving of the crimes, and even the trailer that we're going to get to with the flock cameras that are going to be out there. We can position that if one residential area is getting hit with the residential burglaries, we can set that in that location so we can identify vehicles that come in through. So I mean it's exciting, and it's I think we're moving in the right direction of how technology is going to help public safety. So thanks to the city, and thank you all for that is a huge step in helping us get with the times, if you want to say that, using technology to help us.
Great. I did just want to ask, residents often come to me, they talk about issues that they're having. I know that the building at 911 North Kings Road, they've had mail theft. Thankfully, mail theft is really down this year, but it is still happening. And there was, I believe there was a car break-in, and there was some vandalism and stuff. Do we know of anything? Were there any arrests or any suspects or anything?
So with those incidents that you just mentioned, currently no, there's been no arrests related to those incidents. We are aware of them, and we have been tracking incidents at that location with our special teams, just because it's been brought to our attention that they have had issues. We've deployed things like our decoy car out there to assist in keeping that criminal element from possibly targeting them at that building. We have spoken to, I think, building management there to better secure their building as well.
Good. And I had mentioned earlier during the block-by-block report, the alley behind the Charlie, it's becoming an issue. I've spoken with management there. They're looking to, because the way they build it, there's this alcove back there. People are hanging out there, but my neighbor, Christmas Eve, her car was vandalized. They just put graffiti all over it, and now they're continuing to put another sort of vaguely threatening graffito on the wall there. She called the police. The police came on Christmas Day really quickly. Thank you. I believe that the Ring camera footage was provided. You can see the person clearly. Was anyone caught? Do we know anything?
No one's been caught or arrested with that incident yet, but one of our detectives does have it as part of their cases and is investigating it. That alleyway hadn't really been too much on our radar as of late, but it's going to be on there now for sure.
Excellent, thank you. And my last question is Urban Leaf. They had a burglary on the 10th. Any update there?
Currently no updates on that case. Again, it is being actively investigated though.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Holman.
Thank you, Chair. It's reassuring to know, Lieutenant Lapkin, and thank you for everything that our Sheriff's Department does on behalf of the city, that there was communication going on in the event that evacuations needed to happen. However, how do we relay that information to residents? Because I think if the community knows there is a plan in the event something needs to happen, that could help tamp down the angst. And people running from door to door asking individuals who they think might have information who don't what to do. Like, it would just be great if everyone knew the Sheriff's Department in the city does have an evacuation plan for us. Like, are there any talks? And obviously, this situation is something that in my over 30 years of living here, I've never seen before in Los Angeles. Moving forward, how is this going to be addressed?
I think, like I said earlier, I think we have to do a better job in communicating. Like they spoke, not everybody's on social media. So we have to find different platforms for all the different community members that are here. Yes, we have to put it on social media for those that deal with social media, but we also have to put it on other, communications, whether it be WehoTV, whether it be, whether we do the phone tree, we have to figure out, and that's the things that we're, in talks, and I know that Mr. Burton spoke about the CERT program and how empowering a neighborhood to be self-sufficient for when we do have an emergency. Whether we identify if a specific building has, seniors with disabilities, okay, how are we going to evacuate them? What resources do we need? Is it going to be are we going to be able to get to them? Because we have so we want to make sure that we empower our community members to do that as well. So, but with conjunction with the city, in conjunction with us, we will, we're in talks of figuring out how do we make it better. How do we just saying that we're going to push it out social media? Well, that doesn't help those that are not on social media. So, and that's what we're going to work on. We're going to do better on communicating with all the community members, not just those that are just connected with social media.
And maybe there's a way the city now moving forward can send out information to all residents, letting them know what plans are in place. And also, Director Rivas, we spoke earlier because Lieutenant Lapkin just mentioned something about how to disseminate information. A question I got from several individuals We have advisory boards. We have commissions. Is there a reason that the city is not using these individuals to help get information out to residents? And we did speak about that, and you know, the information you shared with me made sense, but I just think it's something that residents should know. Why these different commissions and advisory boards aren't used in this particular capacity.
Thank you, Commissioner Hallman. And I think what's important is that a lot of folks that are on commissions and advisory boards aren't always checking their email. And so if we are sending something out, you know, via email, I know that there was an email sent to the commission the following day, and also to the neighborhood watch groups and the resident associations, just informing them about what steps had been taken right thus far. But as Lieutenant Lapkin had mentioned, definitely, you know, debriefing on the situation and learning from that situation and looking at what available options are out there, and visiting, getting input and feedback from different groups. I know that we heard some representatives this evening, you know, speak about certain things that they're willing to do and kind of step up. And so that, I think, is very helpful and useful, and definitely something that the city will continue to look at tapping into, you know, under situations such as these. In addition to what Sergeant Duran had mentioned regarding the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, Nixle, the city also has Nixle as well. Our subscribers and opt-in are a different group, but same residents, obviously, but what I mean by different group is folks obviously subscribe to the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, and then there's folks that subscribe to the city, Nixle as well. But there's constant communication, as was mentioned, that was going out throughout that evening into the following day, even prior to that, consistently and repeatedly, and having a unified command approach, which is what was taken during the Sunset Fire. And I know it's referred to as the Sunset Fire, and they title fires in certain ways, but the Runyon Canyon situation and the fire that emerged there, right, is really what was the focus of the situation. And so the city of LA was the primary agency that was leading that effort. That includes Los Angeles Police Department, that includes Los Angeles Fire Department, but both the West Hollywood Sheriff Station and our Los Angeles County Fire Department were a part of that unified command, as well as the city. And so any immediate information that would have been relayed to us in terms of warnings that we needed to issue a Nixle, both on the West Hollywood Sheriff Station or on the city side, would have been done at that time via text and other means of communication, depending on how somebody opts in. And so for those that are familiar with it, when you opt in into Nixle, you have a different variety of communication methods to kind of check off, if you will, whether that's cell phone, text, whether it's a phone call, robocall, whether it's via email. And so there's different methods, or all methods, right, depending on all the boxes that an individual checks off. And so there would have been communication in that instance as it relates to that. And so we obviously need to wait until the city of LA has settled from their situation, because they still have ongoing situations that they're still dealing with. And then we will be meeting with the city of LA, their closest and nearest Los Angeles Police Department, as well as the city of Los Angeles and their Office of Emergency Management, to get a better understanding as well of what their plan is and how they rolled out their communication. Because as some folks had mentioned, we share zip codes on 3 different areas with the city of Los Angeles, as well as with the city of Beverly Hills. And so if folks are taking a different approach in terms of how they're communicating, which occurred during the Runyon Canyon fire. And we've seen that where residents did receive communication from LA City that was not accurate and it was not correct. And that's something that we, of course, could not fix or address in real time with those with that agency. But it's definitely something that we've already reached out to them about, and that we'll continue to have a further discussion as it relates to that. But looking at everything that the commission has mentioned, that the community has mentioned, are definitely things that we're all going to be sitting down and discussing, long term. So,
and as a possible suggestion, once those discussions are had, we do a great job of having community meetings in the city. Maybe the city might want to consider doing emergency preparedness meetings with residents, because now we're all aware of the realistic possibilities of what could happen. We've never seen anything like this in the past. So maybe there's a meeting that's on the west side here in Chambers. Maybe there's a meeting that's in Plummer Park on the east side, where residents can come out and information can be given to them and they can learn about these plans to hopefully, God forbid, if we're in another situation like this, it can help avoid chaos.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion, and definitely something, when there is that internal debrief, in the city and public safety partners, absolutely, that's definitely something that we will keep in mind and make sure that we roll out, because I think that's going to be essential and important. And again, enlisting all of our partners in that effort and pushing that information out. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Post.
Yeah, appreciate all the fire updates. A few quick non-fire related questions for y'all. Just wanted to check in on that piece that I said. Any updated legislative guidance on the enforcement of Prop 36 that you've all received?
We did receive it, and I did not bring that information with me. So we did receive guidance on prior offenses, like what would qualify, and I see the flyer in my head, but I'll bring it next time just to give you an idea. But we did receive direction on how to proceed with certain crimes, whether people had priors of that crime, and there's a distinction whether they had priors with conviction, whether they just had priors. So there is a list of and protocols that we have to follow for specific crimes. So we did receive that, and I could see the flyer in my head, but I did not bring it, so I apologize.
No worries. Yeah, if you could just share that afterwards or at the next meeting, that'd be great. I know you also mentioned the drone program, which again, since our last meeting, we did have another one of those community meetings, and I do think the City Council approved Flying Lion as the provider of that drone service. So I just wanted to see if there was a tentative start date set yet, or if those things are still in the works.
The actual date is still in the works, but it's going to be in the first quarter. We'll have it up and running by the first quarter.
Awesome. Then one last quick question as well. Community safety officer was also approved, I think, at the last city council meeting. So again, might be something for Denny, but if that's something the city's running, how soon would that program also be up and running?
I look at Director Rivas on that one.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Post. So yeah, there was a staff report item that provided an update and also recommended that the City Council consider moving forward with the implementation process of the community safety officers you mentioned. And so the next steps for that is that our department will be working on releasing a request for proposal for vendors and allowing them to submit those proposals to us. And then we'll be evaluating that, making a proposed selection, and then bringing that to the City Council in June of this year, right in line with our budget cycle as well. And so that is the tentative, but I want to say probably more timeline that we need to meet. And then if approved at that point, then we would look at with the selected vendor at that time, going through the hiring process, right, going through the training of those community safety officers, and hopefully, as we reflected in the staff report, having the program in place by December of this calendar year. But of course, that's tentative. That could shift to the beginning of next year, but that would be the timeline, more or less.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Just flagging, because I think, as we talked about with Block by Block, I think those community safety officers could be great emergency responder folks. I don't know if they're quite first responders, as we noted, but might even be more appropriate than block by block officials. Then final questions for the sheriff. I think this has been in the news a lot. Obviously, our federal administration has changed or ramped up enforcement of immigration. I just wanted to check in and see where our sheriff's department stands as it relates in terms of cooperation with ICE and federal officials. I imagine for folks that have committed crimes, obviously we are working with them, but especially in terms of this idea of a sanctuary state or the values of West Hollywood, I just wanted to see to what extent our sheriff's department is prepared, and if there are any changes in terms of that enforcement.
As far as the changes from our department, we haven't had any changes. We will not be allowing ICE into any of our custody facilities. As of now, that's the edict that we've had, with the new sheriff, so nothing's changed for us. We're going to continue to do what we do.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you. Director Rivas, on the 8th, after LA City did send that incorrect communication by text, I got it, to a number of West Hollywood residents, why didn't the city of West Hollywood immediately correct it with a text?
There was a collective decision made at that time to communicate that using the social media platforms that the city had in place, and the city also developed a fires update webpage and also had that as a banner. It's still up right now, so if you were to go to the City of West Hollywood website, then you would be able to click on that, and that information is still there and would reflect current updates. There was also a change to the voicemail message on the city's main line. And so as folks, if they were trying to get a hold or calling City Hall, then when they would have been prompted to go to that webpage as well. And so, that real-time decision, obviously, as I mentioned, was collective. And looking at the situation, as we've seen several other fires unfold, there was obviously a lot of confusion that was created with LA City issuing that Nixle alert. And so in looking at the potential, if for some reason the fire would have started moving closer and there would have been a need to issue, let's say, an evacuation warning alert, or even greater, an evacuation order alert, we didn't want to add to that confusion in terms of that. So the collective decision was really reserve the right, not add to any additional confusion or have folks, and I kind of heard at least one commenter this evening mention that, and I've heard from a variety of community members as well, saying, I was confused, and then I learned that, this wasn't correct, and then, the following day, I know there was a wireless emergency alert that was issued from the County of Los Angeles that was erroneous, and then that was later sent with a correction, and so just in that immediate moment, it was, we didn't want to communicate out and saying, well, this was incorrect, and then let's say, God forbid, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later, you're issuing a notice, and folks maybe aren't taking that at face value. And so, as I mentioned, it's a collective decision that was made, and as was mentioned during the last city council meeting, there will be an internal discussion, and as well as following the direction from our city council that had an item actually on that agenda for there to be review, although we already do these types of reviews whenever there's any sort of emergency type situation or an incident that's nearby, which this was not an immediate situation in West Hollywood, but it was adjacent, and nearby. And as mentioned earlier, if we would have received communication from our Los Angeles County Fire Department, from our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which we had one of our own at the station, Lieutenant Lapkin, actually, who was at the command post at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and even though they were more focused on one specific fire, they obviously had communication and were able to view all fires that were occurring throughout the county of Los Angeles. And so having all of that information, decision would have been made, immediately to notify through text in terms of telling residents that.
So there was a correction made by social media. There was something posted on the website, the city's website, and there was a message on the phone if somebody were to call the city, correcting the LA city text, correct?
In terms of the social media, yes. And in terms of the City of West Hollywood webpage that was created, literally that evening, as we had a group of city personnel, myself included, from a variety of different departments, yes, there was a webpage that was created that corrected that. On the voicemail system, it did not state that there was an erroneous message from the City of LA. It prompted folks to go to the city's social media platforms, to go to the city's website, webpage, to get the most up-to-date information on an ongoing basis.
I think that's a mistake. I'm glad that it's going to be reviewed because, for example, I was in the car. I was on Fountain, absolute gridlock. I was driving to Ralph's to pick up a prescription when this happened, and I got the alert. So besides the fact that I'm a 50-year-old man, I don't spend my time on social media, I was in the car and I couldn't get to social media. I wouldn't have even thought of getting to social media to get a correction. I know that I've spoken to a lot of residents who feel the same way. If you get a text, you expect a text to correct. This is just my opinion, but I think that if you talk to a lot of residents, you're going to hear a similar thing. It's just not the first thought to go to social media. And then the next day, thankfully, we did get a text after everything was fine. But in the time when there's fire burning above you and you get this message, it's confusing. So I hope that we can really look at that and maybe consider doing something different in the future.
Appreciate your comments, Commissioner Nickel. And just to clarify, the following day, that text that you're referring to in terms of correction had nothing to do with LA City. That was the County of Los Angeles wireless emergency alert system, which is different than Nixle. And so they had sent out an evacuation order text throughout the entire County of Los Angeles and then corrected that message. So I just wanted to clarify that for folks that are viewing, but thank you for those comments.
Yes, but the city did send a text the next day, just giving updates and things like that. I'm just saying the city has the ability to do this and to reach people, especially if they're signed up. I strongly encourage everyone to sign up. The Nixle number, Sergeant Duran gave it. But so the ability is there. I just personally wish that it would have happened immediately afterwards to correct the mistake.
Understood. In the text message that was sent, and that was not something that the city issued through Nixle. You may be referring to different text message platforms that are not used for emergency purposes that may have communicated some other information. So, but yeah, we'll definitely, like I mentioned, look at that holistically as a group. But thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
Commissioner Freiberg.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for all your work on that day. I know it was probably insane. But I would like to go back a little bit, and if you could walk us through that day, what your day was. I know you had to go elsewhere, but your department as a whole, what happens? So the Sunset Fire starts, it starts doubling. What do you guys do?
Like on this one specifically, because it was like Director Rivas mentioned, it's City of LA, they're the ones leading it. So whether it be this LA City Fire and LA PD, they're the ones that have the lead on that. But let's say in a situation where we're the lead, LA County is the lead, and LA County Sheriff's Department is the lead, When there's a fire, we take the lead from our fire department. Our fire department tells us, okay, these are evacuations we need to do now. So we go to the area. And we start, whether we do door knocks, whether we drive around and we start saying, you need to evacuate now, you need to evacuate now. There's a lot of time where we're just driving around, making sure people hear us on the PA. Depending on the amount of personnel that we have, we can go door to door, knock, and tell people to leave. Again, like I mentioned earlier, if the need is to close roads in the sense of making them one-way streets, then we make that determination, because we want people to have the ability to leave if they're evacuating and not get in a gridlock where somebody mentioned that there was a fire truck that was stuck on one of the streets. And that is something that, again, the unified command, that it's not a decision that's solely made by the Sheriff's Department, it's in conjunction with the fire department. So our goal is, if it's an evacuation order, leave now, we're out there knocking on doors, getting on our PAs, and notifying people.
And that would be from LA County Fire Department would give you the evacuation orders?
They tell us, yes, these people need to leave because they know the weather pattern, they know the fire pattern. So they're the ones that determine what's an evacuation and what's a warning.
So if that fire had jumped Sunset and started coming this way, would LA City be telling LA County firefighters to tell you to evacuate?
Yes, that's how that works.
That's how that works. Okay. Because, I mean, I don't even want to think about what would have happened if there was just that one wind gust that came over Sunset. I don't know what would have happened. I mean, I want to talk about traffic and gridlock. So you do have the ability to make one-way streets. How many officers would you, or sheriffs would you have that day to do traffic?
It depends on the time of day, weekend, evening. It depends. We can have from 8 to, if we were on 12s, we can have 20 officers here. So it all depends on like when we were on 12 and 12s, we had everybody that was here. Nobody had a day off. You're on a A shift or a B shift. Either you work the morning shift, that's the A shift, or you work the B shift. So our resources are split in half. So we would have had sufficient officers to do that. And to be honest, we need one black and white to make a street, at each end, to make it a one-way street. And the beauty of that is we get resources. Even though West Hollywood, let's say if it was a fire that started in West Hollywood and LAPD was not involved with it, we have our mutual aid partners that come and assist us. Let's say for whatever reason we didn't have enough deputies here, we will ask our mutual aid partners to come and assist us, whether it be LAPD, Santa Monica, Hermosa, Beverly Hills, they come and assist us in any given emergency, like we do the same for them.
What that was going to lead into my next question was, okay, you make the street into one way, and then all of a sudden you run into LA City, and they're not doing the same traffic. So they would be working with you.
Yes.
With the traffic.
Yes, we would be in
for
communication.
Sure.
Oh yes, absolutely. Because there's no purpose of us making a one-way street when they're not. So we're in constant communication, and that's when we say the incident management team comes into play, where we have our mutual aid partners and we speak.
Okay. I have a lot more questions. What were your volunteers doing that day?
Depending on, I don't know if we had any volunteers on duty that day.
We did.
I mean, do you call them in when there's a crisis or emergency? And
yes.
How many are there?
Yes.
I know you had said how many before. I can't remember.
So we currently have approximately 17 volunteers. I think one of them is out on medical right now. When the fire events started to take place, they did reach out asking if there was any shifts they could assist us in extra staffing of the desk, things like that, which helped immensely for us, because it takes away a person having to be up for people that come into our lobby. We don't have to have a deputy up there. The volunteers aid in that. So they did contact us, and they did provide extra staffing just overall through the fire weeks that were going on. And one of the days they assisted Malibu by going up to Malibu and helping deliver meals to the firefighters and the deputies that were on fixed posts.
Because I know you have talked about how dedicated your volunteers are. And if there's a way we can get those volunteers to canvas before all of this happens, go to, like I had said before, go to the senior buildings, go to, people with mobility issues, just go around and see who's there, get names, find out what they need. I mean, I think, I mean, there's lots of people who don't even have transportation. And look at Louise. You know, we have Louise. I don't mean to call you out, but she has a wheelchair, and she did have transportation. But let's say somebody dropped their stuff in the middle of the hallway. Now she can't get out. You know, I mean, but if we have this information of where she is, and you know, we can help these people. So I think like to really utilize the volunteers, because I know they're so dedicated and they really help you guys out. So I think that's something to look into. To the communication, I didn't get anything. I didn't even get the wrong text. I got nothing. I know a lot of people who were on social media were busy on top of my roof of my building watching the fire while I'm watching it on TV turn into an inferno, but they're seeing it from a different direction. They're not knowing even to leave. But I think there was just a feeling of abandonment. You didn't know where to go. You didn't know what to do. Was there a shelter to go to? Nobody mentioned there was nothing. So as we've been talking about this all night, but I think you had mentioned the Nixle system that sends safety alerts. I mean, that's always a good thing. But there's just so many other ways you can communicate, you know. Jamie, that's Jamie, right? So Jamie, would you mind stepping up to the mic? I would like to know what you were doing that day, because I know you're the information officer. So I'm kind of curious of what your plan was. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I forget how close I have to be to this thing in order for
Yeah,
everybody to be able to
that's
hear
good.
me, but I think I'm good.
So were you working that day?
Immediately, whenever any sort of emergency occurs, me and Sergeant Duran and Lieutenant Lapkin and the captain are all always in constant communication. My job is slightly different from a normal law enforcement technician in terms of I can always be on call. I obviously can't tell the future in terms of when emergencies happen, so always being somewhere where I can be in constant communication with my team is extremely important. I was immediately notified by Sergeant Duran. I believe we started to look at the fire. We had radio, I believe, of the incident that we were listening to. That was LAFD and LA County working together. Luckily, our radio systems, we can hear that. So we were listening to that. We were talking about how we wanted to handle it. Obviously, LA City was handling it. We don't want to step on them in terms of what we hear and maybe get the information out differently than how they're saying it. And I believe we started to put out social media in terms of we were aware that this was going on, and if any sort of need from us in terms of evacuations, we would be putting that information out on social media. I have heard the difference of opinion in terms of social media, and we are going to look into other ways to get that information out. For me, obviously being younger, social media is what I tend to lean towards, but obviously hearing everybody's thoughts tonight, we'll be looking into other ways to get that information out that is just as quick and just as streamlined for us as a department.
Okay, and
Let me just clarify one thing. Just so that, just to clarify, Jamie is our social media. She's not technically the PIO. So the PIO is a different role. So her role is to be in constant communication with us on what we need to push out social media aspect. Again, we're going to look at trying to, and working with the city to try and do something other than just social media, because we've heard not everybody's on social media. But Jamie's role is any type of emergency, constant contact. Okay, we need to put this out. So she creates the content, we approve it, mainly Jason, and it gets pushed out. But just to distinguish, I mean, her role is not a PIO, it's just a social media that she's helping us with pushing information out social media wise.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. There is a software system. It's called You Are Not Alone, but it can be used for anything. It does robocalls. I had brought this up to this actual commission back in 2017. I brought it up to the Disability Advisory Board. It was shot down. I brought it up to the Human Services, a couple of the commissioners, they shot it down. It is under $100. You can literally just have, I want to say it's like around $900. The San Diego County law enforcement uses it. Law enforcement all across the nation uses it for all different kinds of things, but I think what's great about it is it can send out robocalls. It can send out calls to the volunteers. It can send out, you could specialize it to do anything with just a touch of a button. It's so inexpensive. I mean, is that something that you would be interested in hearing more about?
We could look into it. That's something that we could definitely look to see if it's something that we can use. I mean, anything that help us push out information, disseminate information would be great. Yeah, we'll look into it.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be used on a daily basis to check on people. It can even be used to call somebody, and if they don't answer, you get the information immediately that this person isn't answering, isn't responding, maybe there's something wrong. But it's just something to look into. I could send you that information
that would be great.
on that.
Thank you.
But I think it would, just be another tool in the toolbox for the information. And the other thing I wanted to, and I know you're all still assessing all of this and going through what worked and what didn't work. I just want to kind of get into the aftermath of what would have happened if nothing horrific happened, we had to evacuate, but you know how they weren't letting people back into the area to get their pets and medication. Is there a plan for that could help people go get their pets so they're not standing there, weeks in and their pet is probably dead at this point?
So I can tell you, just working from the Eaton fire, the reasons why they were not allowed. One, it's safety. There was wires down and there was still hot spots. So we were not going to let people in there without being escorted. So depending on the amount of people, that deputies or staff that we had, we would allow escorts. So I could do what ifs all day long, but
Right.
I mean, if the situation is safe, absolutely, we can make arrangements for whether it be the volunteers taking them in.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, first it has to be rendered safe. And I know that as hard as it is to hear for the community, safety is the number one. So I know for Eaton, I can speak for Eaton, the wires, it was not safe for them to go. And we escorted people when we were able to do that, to go pick up their pets or go feed their animals. We did that numerous times. So that's something that we can definitely, on a case by case identify. And the beauty about, even medications, let's say we can't go in, there's, I know CVS or Walgreens, in a state of emergency can give you a prescription, because in a state of emergency, you don't have to get something from your doctor. You can just say, hey, these are the prescriptions that I have. They give you sufficient to get you through a couple of days. I mean, there's different, there are many, many things that we can do to help our community. I mean, again, number one thing is safety.
Right, but is this something that's already a plan? Is
Yes.
it mobilized or, ready to go if it happened tomorrow? Or
Yes.
is this something we're just thinking? Yes.
No,
okay.
it's
Yes
again,
means yes. Okay,
depending on
got
the
it.
situation, if we're clear and it's safe to go, absolutely, we can escort people in.
And you'll have people to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, just to add to that, so the city does have an emergency plan in place and has. And so we rely again on a unified command approach. And so mutual aid, working with our partners if need be, if we needed to call out to Beverly Hills, to Culver City. Obviously, Santa Monica was dealing with their own situation. And so, looking at all of those moving parts, getting information up to date, accurate information, and then moving with a plan, having shelters already kind of pre-designated in terms of where we would activate, providing transportation for folks
Can I
most
stop you
in
for a
need,
moment? So you talked about shelters. So where would have the shelter have been that day?
So there was 2 shelters that were already activated by the Red Cross in the city of Los Angeles because of the fire being in the city of Los Angeles. We were already in communication. We would not have activated Plummer Park because of the close proximity to where the fire occurred. So our most prominent location would have been actually here at West Hollywood Park in terms of establishing that. Although because there were 2 shelters already active and open, there was obviously a lot of communication going on in terms of Red Cross, because it wasn't just this location. Red Cross had activations going on, as we're well aware of, throughout the county of Los Angeles, right, because of the multiple fires that were occurring. But West Hollywood Park, more or less, would have served as the dedicated location for us in this instance.
And then what if the fire already past sunset and had gone that way? Then where do you go?
So as I mentioned, there were already two evacuation sites in the city of Los Angeles. One was within 5 miles, another was within 2 miles. So we would have utilized those outside of the city of West Hollywood, and then also started reaching out and communicating to our adjacent cities, as I mentioned, Beverly Hills and others, depending on where the location of the fire is. So all of that was taken into consideration and was already pre-designated and in the works in terms of if we absolutely needed to, then we would have those locations already in place with assistance coming.
And then who does Red Cross talk to? You or the
So the Red Cross is communicated through us.
Through you? Okay.
Through the community safety, not through me personally, but yes,
Right,
I was
that's what I meant.
speaking with folks, but
You
with
are
the
the city,
community
I'm just
safety
kidding.
department, with the city, yes. We had already started that communication since the very beginning. But again, their focus was the city of LA sites, which were activated because there was evacuation orders that eventually were issued, and then warning notices that were later issued as well.
Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the community emergency response team, which I know you already had one alumni. I spoke to you, Anita, about this, 20 people that showed up to the last meeting in October. If anyone isn't sure about what it is, it's the CERT. Do you want to explain a little bit about it, Anita?
Sure, thank you.
What it is?
We held a community emergency response team alumni meeting, and so the intent of that was anyone in the community who had previously been trained, CERT trained by our Los Angeles County Fire Department would be able to network and know who in their neighborhood is also trained, so that in the event of an emergency, they can collaborate and assist neighbors, assist anybody in the neighborhood that is unable to obtain public safety resources if there's an emergency and resources are low. So our intention of that program is to make sure that we build teams and collaboration and network amongst our CERT trained community members. Obviously in those times when you work as a team, you're much more effective, and knowing who in your neighborhood is available and can step up and help is always helpful. So we created that avenue for our CERT alumni to meet each other, to have a map of who in their area is available to assist and who is trained, and to continue training together, building together, and build on all of those skills that they obtained during the training, and not lose on that big momentum that they have now gained by having this training.
Okay, and just to touch on what their training is in case somebody doesn't know, it trains residents to respond to disasters, administer first aid, search and rescue, fire safety, hazardous material, and aftermath assistance. I mean, this is exactly what we need. And when you talk about a map, so you have a map of these team members, it'd be great to have a map of the residents of who needs the help the most and spread out from there. So this would be great for something we can really look into and expand. And I'm sure if you send out a flyer and ask more people to join, that they probably would at this point, knowing what we've all been through. Something to think about.
Thank you.
And I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. Briefly, Director Rivas, since it's come up numerous times this evening that many residents aren't on social media, has there, and I know this is all still very fluid, but have there been any discussions of how we can use WehoTV to get information out to people, even if it's a repetitive scroll of what's going on? Because some residents may naturally or organically go look at that versus looking at social media.
Yes, absolutely. That is definitely something that is being discussed and will be discussed further as a part of the internal briefing. Our communications department played a vital role and was a part of the team throughout the evening and the early morning hours. And so, yes, absolutely, we'll be taking a look at that to see the feasibility and see what types of messaging could be potentially provided through WehoTV.
Any other commissioner comments? Sergeant Jerome, did you want to add something?
Yeah, if I could, just really quickly. We just like to have a very heartfelt thank you to the community and the local residents that brought food and supplies to our station for our deputies over this last 2 weeks. On a regular basis, local business, local residents brought items to our station to aid our deputies that were going to be responding to the fires. We understand that the firefighters are doing all the heavy lifting. However, the deputies were out there for in excess of 12 hours, sometimes 18, 19 hours on a fixed post. So having that extra food, water, Gatorade, things like eye drops that were brought in, amazing. And we thank everybody for doing that too for us.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, do we have any public speakers at this time?
Yes, we have 3. First, we have Louise Smith. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Commission members. I just wanted to thank our first responders. I didn't get a chance to.
Your microphone's not on.
Anyway, small technical difficulty here. Thank you. I wanted to extend my gratitude for all of you and to the commission for hearing all of us. I think we have a lot to work to do in the city, but I'm very confident that our neighborhoods will come together during this. Through the neighborhood watch groups and also for the CERT training and whatever we can get going. And hopefully the Sheriff's Department will get many more volunteers out of this. Again, I want to express my gratitude for people that have reached out, both from the mayor and the commission and for just my community. We've had a good response, neighbor looking after neighbor, and I think we need to emphasize that more because that's who we're going to have to depend on. I grew up in a rural area. There was no 911, so if you didn't rely on your neighbors, you didn't have any help. So that's kind of the situation you're in when you are in a disaster. And having worked in healthcare in the field I was in was transfusion medicine. We had backups to backups to backups for the blood supply. And that's the way I think that many of the neighborhood condos and apartments need to have. My building has a chest with water and dehydrated food and helmets and masks and in the garage that people can get to. But I think you need to get this out. I don't think people think it's ever going to happen to them. And this was real. This kind of fire that we're in now can disintegrate and incinerate urban areas faster than we can ever respond to it. So that's all I wanted to express. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Next, we have Stephanie Harker. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. Again, yes, thank you. Thank you so much to our loyal and steadfast West Hollywood sheriffs, as well as the LA County sheriffs and the fire department. A couple of things on how to alert people. I happen to have the 888-777, so I get those notices. But what I get and what I hear being in a group when an Amber Alert goes off, it seems to be a lot faster and it gets your attention. You don't have to be looking at your phone. You hear those alerts going off, and then the information is, it's usually the Amber Alert is for missing children or abducted children. But certainly I should think that that same system could be used, might be used for an emergency that affects the whole area, because you need to reach 35,000 people, basically. And even on social media, Mr. Heilman did put on several things. He only started on January 9th, but at least they were on there. But I looked, he only had 4,200 followers, and I am not one of them. So he reached, maybe he reached 4,200 people, but again, that leaves another 30,000 who don't know. And I had understood, Mr. Rivas, also that it was Plummer Park or WeHo Park, but I don't think a lot of people know that. I've made a plan with my friends to meet, if you're out and about and you're not near your home, so you're not going to meet at your home. I picked a spot, but again, I think that like Kevin Burton mentioned, people need to be prepared, not be doing this the day of or the day after this going out. And if someone could perhaps repeat the information and let all of us out in television land repeat how to get on the 888-777. Do we text to that, or does someone who is not on it text that? And is there a separate one for that for the city of West Hollywood? Is there a separate nixle that goes out with things regarding the city of West Hollywood? But again, I think that's most important, because as someone mentioned, I think everybody's on high alert now, and I think that they would more likely sign up right away to be receiving those emergencies. Thank you very much for everything you've done for us, though.
Thank you, Stephanie. And our final speaker is Ed Holman. If you want to approach the podium, you'll have 3 minutes.
Once again, good evening. Thank you to our Sheriff's Department, Fire Department for keeping us safe. Much appreciated. Real quick, everybody's talking about communication, how to get word out about emergencies in the city. We have these electronic boards. This one's on Olive and Santa Monica that I see with commercials and sometimes city information about Pride or whatnot. Can these be used to put, if emergency's happening, like hit something and then something goes out to all the bus stops and whatnot? People are walking by and can see that, not just stuff, social media on their phones, but use those as a resource to get the information out to people. Just want to suggest using those since they're used for other things. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And that is all the speakers.
Thank you, Sergeant and Lieutenant. Again, thank you for your service and for having your boots on the ground. Thank you. Item 9 on the agenda for this evening is items from staff. Are there any community safety updates?
Good evening, and thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. We are excited to announce the return of our Public Safety Appreciation event, which will take place on March 12th. We will be recognizing the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles County Fire Department, and our block-by-block ambassadors here at Council Chambers from 11:30 to 1:30, which will include a luncheon and an awards ceremony. Please save the date, and we will be sharing more with you on this event in the coming weeks. At the January 21st City Council meeting last Tuesday, staff presented the city's semi-annual community safety update. The presentation included public safety activities from the Community Safety Department, including data from our Sheriff's Department, our County Fire Department, block by block, and the city's Neighborhood and Business Safety Division. This presentation also included an update on the public safety technology items, including the drones, fixed cameras, and the real-time watch center. The contracts for the implementation of the drones and fixed cameras were approved by City Council. The Community Safety Officer Program was also presented and approved to pursue options for implementation. We wanted to also extend our appreciation to our public safety partners from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, Los Angeles County Sheriff Department, and Block by Block, who worked tirelessly to keep our community safe during the recent wildfires. We encourage all community members to please sign up to receive emergency notifications by texting your zip code to 888-777. This concludes the updates from the Public Safety Division. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10 on our agenda for this evening is the second round of public comments. Commission Secretary, do you have any speakers at this time?
I don't see any public comments at this time.
And nothing on Zoom either?
Nothing on Zoom.
Great, thank you. Item 11 on the agenda for this evening are commissioner comments. Do any commissioners have any comments at this time? Commissioner Blau.
Thank you, Chair. As Commissioner Post mentioned earlier, and we've seen over the past week, and saw for a while coming, we've got a federal government which is adversarial and in opposition to the tenets and beliefs of the city and community. Of concern to me especially are the statements that have come from the White House and Department of Justice threatening the prosecution of sanctuary cities and officials that do not comply with ICE. We are also at the same time in the process of deploying and assessing the council-approved public safety technology, and based on the proposed design, with the city of West Hollywood unable to completely control this data, it's in the hands of the sheriff, and given we may be unable to prevent data collected on behalf of the city being used against the community and the community's objectives, I think it's in good practice that we think clearly about what data itself is collected at all. And of specific concern to me is the placement of the fixed mounted cameras near or in view of healthcare facilities. We've got Planned Parenthood on Santa Monica Boulevard and Westbourne. There's a number of law offices in the city that work with immigration, and then additionally marijuana dispensaries throughout the city. So that's something I want to raise and hope that the department is going to keep in mind as they're looking at deployments for that. And then the last point that I want to raise is just, actually, I'll leave it at that. I think it's been long enough, but that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Hallman.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention and thank Assemblymember Rick Chavez-Zeber. On December 15th, he did his AD 51 Community Excellence Award, and I was humbled to be honored as his Man of the Year. So I would like to thank him for that acknowledgement. It was a very special honor to me. It meant a lot. It was something that I never ever assumed would ever happen, because what I do in the city, I do because I love the city. And thank you to Anita Shandi for coming to the event, for being there. So a big thank you to our assemblyman for his honoring, like different individuals and organizations for their community excellence.
Commissioner Post.
Yeah, just two comments. One, I know we just had our Vision Zero presentation at the last meeting, so just wanted to flag, I had a business community member at Fairfax and Santa Monica at their establishment. One of their workers ended up getting clipped by the Metro bus right at that stop. I think I flagged this intersection in the past or during that presentation. So just flagging that again, that there was that accident. I do think she's actually pressing some type of charges. Regardless, I think just continuing to evaluate our street safety is something that we should continue to be working with the Transportation Commission on as well. Then my other comment, in terms of really appreciating all of our first responders, especially our firefighters. I know someone, I think, mentioned it in the public comment, but We have at least about, I think, 30% of our firefighters in the Los Angeles County area are incarcerated firefighters. If you didn't know that, most of which are working at very low pay, $5, $10 an hour, maybe $1 an hour extra on top of that. There was a recent Assembly Bill 247, that was recently introduced to increase pay for those incarcerated firefighters. I did mention this to Councilmember Byers, and just wanted to bring it to the attention of the Public Safety Commission as well, because I think it would be really great to see the city supporting that bill, even through a supporting resolution, as those folks have put their lives on the line for us during this time as well. So not sure if that's something that we can vote on or something like that, that I'll be continuing to work with the city council members, but just wanted to put that out there as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Freiberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the public for coming out and speaking tonight and giving some really good ideas. I mean, Kathy, with the Amber Alerts, I mean, an Amber Alert can wake up the dead, pretty much. I mean, it's so loud. I mean, that's a great system. And Ed, talking about the bus stops and, including billboards. We get, HOAs together for the condominiums, the sheriff's volunteers. There's people from CERT program. This is going to be a community effort. This isn't going to be, we can't just give it to the sheriffs and say, go ahead, keep us safe. I mean, this is something we're all going to have to do, and I think we want to do it because this is where we live. And if that didn't scare you, what happened, I don't know what it would take, but now we do have a chance to bring everything together and get a plan together. But we do need a leader, and we do need the city to lead the volunteer programs, the community programs, because, otherwise it starts to stagger a little. And we've seen that, I think, with Neighborhood Watch. So I just wanted to put that 2 cents in, and that is it. Thank you.
Commissioner Nickel.
Thank you, Chair. In light of everything that's been happening, I did speak with a member of the California Board of Forestry and Fire Protection just to see if I could get some tips. And we had a really good conversation about hardening the home. And there are actually things that we can do. You can go out right now and you can walk around your home. You can try to create a barrier between your house and the next house. And I just wanted to give everyone a website to go to because there's a lot of really good information on there. So it is fire.ca.gov/home-hardening. fire.ca.gov/home-hardening. There's a quiz on there that you can take to assess things that you might need to do. There's a visual of a house, and you can click like eaves are a big problem. Sparks get up there, and gutters, if there's leaves in the gutters, things that you wouldn't even think of. And it might be something the city needs to look at. I mean, we look at retrofitting for earthquakes. Now we know we are definitely in danger of fire. So maybe we need to assess a lot of buildings, especially homes, see if it's something the city can do along with homeowners. But I strongly encourage people to go and have a look at that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Harrison.
I think I'm saying anything new that hasn't been said, but one thing that I think is clear, people did come together. I mean, I definitely felt it with my neighbors on my street, my area. And I do think there's an opportunity now, like in this moment, to take advantage of that because people are definitely paying attention. I think, Todd said it as well, but all my life living in Los Angeles, I've never had a realistic fear that fire was going to be an issue. And then seeing what happened in Altadena, and so I think that's really present for a lot of folks. And we'd be remiss not to take advantage of that right now and to pull more people into the public conversation like you all have tonight. So thank you again. And yeah, I think we've got some work to do, but now's the right time to do it.
Thank you. I first want to thank our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, our LA County Fire Department for all their hard work, for their countless hours that they've spent fighting those fires. And you can't say thank you enough, so I just want to say thank you to all of our first responders. And we saw what happened at the Sunset Fire, and that was just a small glimpse that showed us that we are not ready for any kind of disaster here in West Hollywood or LA County. You know, everyone keeps talking about the big earthquake's gonna happen, but if we saw how unprepared we were for the Sunset Fire, what's gonna happen when the big earthquake hits? So there is a lot of work that has to be done, like Vice Chair Harrison said. There has to be more CERT trainings, and there has to be better and more communication going on, letting the community know what's happening. I'm glad everyone is safe who is here, and I thank you guys for coming out. Thank you to the community, our West Hollywood residents for coming out and speaking to us and voicing your concerns. I do thank you for that. Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? All right. The Public Safety Commission will adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, February 10th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in West Hollywood Park Public Meeting Room, Council Chambers. Thank you.
I am the icon, Sean Laurent. I've been in the house and ballroom scene probably since the early 90s. I and a couple of friends actually created the scene here in Los Angeles. The only reason why I do this work is so that people feel like they are seen, and then also that I remain to be seen.